Hello everybody, my name's Tel and welcome to the channel. This is part 2 of an earlier video. So this is a conclusive video, a judgment day on the problems that I've been having for 4 years on my VFR 800 2006 model. So here is a very quick potted history of what went wrong. Over a period of 4 years, my bike was breaking down periodically. Without warning, it would just basically stop. Instrument panel would just go blank, the bike would just stop. No power, and I'd have to pull over to the side of the road, which in itself was dangerous. So the first time it happened, I ended up changing the battery and changing the stator after being recovered, because I didn't know which one was causing the problem. I didn't know whether the regulator was okay or not, but I thought it was definitely the stator, because stator was actually burnt out. After refitting that, it all worked for a while. So everything seemed to be fine. And then again, it went. This was, say, 2, 3, 4 months later it went. So I didn't know in the beginning whether it was a good thing to change it again. The stator, I'd changed it once, but I just thought I'd better take it apart and have a look, and it had gone again. This time I changed the battery again, because I didn't know if it had done any harm to the battery, and I thought I can charge the other one up. So I changed all three. I changed the stator, I changed the battery, and I changed the regulator rectifier, which is the thing that provides the current for the charging and the voltage for the charging. I thought surely if I put all of those replacement into all of those positions, then this should work. Well, it didn't. Well, it did to begin with, and then it failed again. And this went on another couple of times. So in the very end, I spoke to a friend of mine who said, why don't you try this company? I've heard of them, pretty good. So that's what I did. I went and bought a new regulator and a new rectifier. There was a little bit of a difference this time because I wasn't using the standard design that Honda had got in there. And that was a shunt regulator. And what that means is when the voltage becomes too high, they drain off current down to ground, and it reduces the voltage. So with a MOSFET regulator, what that means is it just restricts the amount of voltage generated without dumping it all to ground. So this should have reduced the load on the stator itself. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you back to that point at which I'd already changed for either 3 or 4 stators. And I was going on to my 5th or 6th one. I can't really remember how many. Now, the sensible people amongst you will be saying, why did you do this so many times? Well, partially desperation, because I just needed the bike to work. Partially because of money, because it's so expensive to buy a new one. I couldn't justify at that time in my mind spending so much money on a Honda part. Extremely expensive compared to what I could get aftermarket. But therein lies the problem. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Let's take a look back when I was actually looking at the new recommended set of parts. So the regulator, rectifier and the stator have arrived. We're just beginning to open it and have a look at the contents here. So we have 2 things in the package. Weight of that is definitely the stator. Definitely the stator. No 2 ways about it. And there she is. It's a regular box from I don't know who. So let's have a look at the stator itself. Let's have a look. Now, I have to say at first glance, this looks better. I can't say for sure it is better, but it looks better. I mean, the coils themselves, I'm pretty certain that those coils are more the windings are more substantial. I haven't got my meter with me at the moment, so I can't actually verify. But I mean, it's essentially they're all stators are pretty much the same. The only thing that I'd be concerned about is these wires, these yellow wires. They seem a bit less soft, the insulation on those, than the ordinary ones I've seen. So we've got this thing that plugs into the rectifier regulator. Hopefully that's long enough, and if it isn't, then it isn't. But we'll see. So let's have a look at the regulator rectifier. So this is the bit that's going to be different for us. Ooh, that's interesting. Oh my god, I hope that's okay. That looks pretty big to me. That looks pretty tall. I'm not sure this is going to fit on the bike because the original rectifier is about this wide, and if I'm not mistaken, the bolts are nearer the top, but we'll have to have a look. So we got these massive stator winding things here, which is fine. So That looks good. And the other two things, which I've now got to get to the other end of the bike, are two big fat wires. So it's not one thing that has to go through the body, it's two. So it was after this that I fitted the new stator and the new regulator into the bike. That's all detailed in the first video, but we're not going to go into that because there's no point. And I said at the time I felt very hopeful that this was going to be okay, but I believe that the stator and the regulator would be fine because this was a reputable company, which I believe it probably is. But they said that they'd had no problem with the stators that they supplied, which I've got no reason to disbelieve that. All I can do is account for my experience. So everything appeared to be working just fine for a while, just like all the other times. I can't remember how many months it went. I think it was 2 or 3 months. And then it's unceremoniously failed yet again. And I had to be recovered again. And at this point, I thought, right, I have had enough. So it was at this point I decided enough is enough of aftermarket products. I have to go and get the original. The reason I never went for a Honda Pucker part in the very beginning was because of the price. From China, either via eBay or this company, you were paying roughly, in fact this company was much more expensive, but it was significantly less expensive than the part from Honda. So I'm talking in the order of usually around about 60 to 70 pounds. And I thought, this is just no good, I've just got to go and spend the money. So that's what I did. I went down to Fowler's Motorcycle Spares in Bristol, who sell Honda parts, and I bought the item. It cost me a lot of money. It cost me £472, I think, for a brand new stator. And the difference between the two, visually, is quite obvious. The left-hand side, obviously, it says Chinese stator, various sources. All of them are Chinese, regardless of where they came from. All the aftermarket ones are Chinese, and they all look pretty similar, and they all failed. Every last one of them failed. But you wouldn't think that just by looking at it. But if you look at the right hand side of the picture, it shows you a completely different thing. This wasn't a picture taken of the actual one that I received, because at this point I was so disenchanted with everything. The only thing that I wanted to do was get it fitted. So unfortunately I didn't take a picture of it, which I wish I had, but I didn't. But I found this, and this looks to me pretty much to be what I received, as far as I can tell from memory. And I specifically remember this sort of protection around the coils. So I don't know what this is that's around the coils, but it's not on these. And also the other thing to note, that these yellow wires which carry the three-phase voltage out and back to the regulator rectifier to supply it are much harder. So the insulation on these are quite hard in comparison with these cheap Chinese aftermarket products. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. But these felt very, very soft. The last one actually was felt slightly firmer than the other ones, but it was still soft in comparison with this. This was felt to me at least to be pretty tough and just looked more robust, really. When I was fitting these stators earlier on, I did actually measure the core resistance. So the core resistance out of circuit, I got a multimeter on it, and I put the leads together and I did a relative reading on the coils. What that means is it's basically zeroing out whatever that resistance was between the two leads, and then when you measure the target, which is the coil, it will give you effectively a zero based reading, and not include the cables themselves, which are touching the coil. So on here they were all of them were somewhere in the region of about 0.7 ohms to about 0.9 ohms. I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was going to be low, but I didn't know what to expect. So it seemed to me reasonable that it would be something quite low like that. And it was similar on all of them, actually, all of the ones I received. When I received this, however, it was lower. When I tested this one, the one from Honda, it was something like 0.3 or 0.4. So that doesn't sound much, but it is a difference. And I do think that that may have been something to do with the problem, at least in part, because if this has got a higher resistance, it means when the power's been pulled through, that there's going to be some energy dissipated in the coils. Okay, and if it's high resistance, it means more energy is going to be dissipated in the coils, which means it gets hotter. So it's already hot in the engine, especially on a hot day in the summer. And if you're putting more energy into the coil itself, then it stands to reason there's a greater chance of breaking down the insulation. Now, I can't say for 100% that was what it was, but I believe it to be part of the cause. I also noticed actually when I was looking around that the original part number for it, which is the same main part number for this actually, if you go and look it up, there is now a replacement one. Which is a -03, not a -02 number for this. So I don't know whether it's a minor adjustment or it's an adjustment that Honda made because they determined that there was a problem with the stators on these bikes, and they made some small changes. I don't know what it might be, or it might not be anything to do with that at all. It might be because they're using different components or something, but that was something I noticed. Anyway, to cut a long story short, this was done back in the spring of this year, 2024, and I've done a lot of mileage since then. Not only have I done a lot of mileage, I've done a lot of mileage, and some of those portions of the year when it was starting to get cold, I've had the heated grips on as well, so it's drawing quite a lot of power. And I also added a voltmeter to the front of the bike, not just I had a voltmeter on the back, but now I've got a voltmeter on the front, which is in easy view for me. So that means I can check what the stator is putting out, and when it's charging, when you're riding along, it's putting out a pretty consistent 14.5 to 14.6 volts all the time, and that never changes. So far, I don't know how many miles I've ridden, but I've been riding every week, and I've been riding several times a week. So they're 50-mile trips. So I'll probably be doing 200 miles a week, I would guess. And that's every week. That's been every week since the beginning of since the spring. So that's what 8 months. That could be eight months at 200 a week. So that's several thousand miles anyway. And I've absolutely had no problem at all. That's not to say that it may not happen, but this is the longest period of time that I've had since these problems started without any problems. The only problem I did have was a momentary loss of power, which is that was not. I don't believe that was associated with the stator because I was watching the voltmeter at the time, and it didn't drop below this went on for probably about 20 seconds or something. 20 seconds, and the voltmeter updates faster than that. I think it's every 8 or 9 seconds or something like that. So I know that the voltage hadn't dropped, at least when I was looking at it. And yeah, so it's been absolutely fine. And so my conclusion to this, based on everything that I've experienced, is that the Chinese stators are not worth the money. They're not worth the money because they are just failing. I don't know if this is a common experience with other people, because I haven't polled people and asked people about that, but I have read things online, and it seems to me that there is a finality in the belief that the Chinese stators will not last long at all, and that has been my experience. And if I re-mention the fact that it had done 47,000 miles or so, something like that, before the first stator went with a genuine Honda part, and has been absolutely fine for the last 8 months, and I think I can, 7 or 8 months, whatever it is, then I can pretty much say now that I believe that was the problem. It's not something I could have reasonably done before because it hadn't been long enough between the point of repair and the point which I could have made a video earlier because it might just have happened again. If you want to review the first video, which actually shows you the mechanics of fitting all of this, actually fairly easy to do. The things that you will need is a gasket for the stator cover. You don't have to even change the oil. Actually, you don't have to empty the oil out. It does not take long to do. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, hang a like, share with your friends, and I will see you next time. It's gonna be